Hello, dreamers of all ages, and welcome to Catch Us at the Castle.
Hey everyone, I'm Steph Sweets.
And I'm Ed Pizza. You can catch us both at the castle. And this week we're talking about dueling castles because while we both love both parks, we not only have our own favorite parks, but we have reasons why they're our favorites. And so Stephanie and I have sat down and come up with lists. We have not shared those lists with each other, so they might they might match up, they might conflict, but we're just gonna chat a little bit about what it is we love about Disneyland, the original park, and what we love about Disney World. And along the way, I would imagine some of what we dislike will come out based on what it is we like about one park or the other. Is that fair to say, Steph?
I totally agree. I'm sure that the things that we dislike will come out. Yeah.
I'm just wondering who's going to be surprised first. We are going to take turns with our list, but a little bit of housekeeping. Catch us at the castle on all those social media channels. You are at Steph Parkside on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I am at Pizza in Motion. All right, well, that means you get to kick us off with, we said we were going to go chronologically. So we're going to start with Disneyland, the original, and you get to kick off with something you love about the original, the OG.
The OG. And I think starting off with the original, you have to say the number one thing is that this is where Walt walked, right?
Yeah.
There's a different feel between the two parks, and you can feel it. It's just, he's there, and it's amazing to be able to be there and be like, yeah, that's his apartment. That's, this is where he was. So to me, that's one of my favorite things about Disneyland.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I've done the apartment tour. I think you have too, no?
I haven't.
Oh, all right. Well, that'll have to be a conversation for another show, but definitely worth it. And you're right. It does have that feel about it, and that sort of coincides with one of mine on list. But I want to hold that one for just a minute. But
okay.
But I agree. There's that original feel for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go with your next item, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, my first one. I went with small, not Small World, even though it is a small world. But in this case, everything about Disneyland feels small in a way that it feels very achievable. It doesn't feel, some people get overwhelmed by Disney World. But I also think when I say small, I don't mean small as in not significant, but more in just that it's very easy to get to places. It all feels very put together, which ties into something else that I have a little bit further down my list. But the fact that it's not massive means that you can just wander and discover and still manage to accomplish everything without having to plan every step of your trip 6 months in advance.
Yes. And along those lines, it's not on my list, but it made me think of, you can easily park hop because it is so small and compact. Right. You can decide that you want to ride a specific ride, hop on over to California Adventure, ride that ride. There have been many times I've been in Disneyland. We decide we want to eat in California Adventure. We pop over there, come back for the parade. It's just it's a lot easier to get back and forth between the two parks.
100%. One of my bestest Disney friends is Summer Hall Mommy Points, and she frequently does not buy park hopper at Disney World. And part of it is just because she feels like the time to get between parks can be challenging. And while I would tend to disagree with her in some respects, you're spot on when you say it's a 5-minute walk from one park to the other.
Yeah, if even that. It's very close.
All right, well, what's next on your list?
Next on my list, this probably could be controversial. Churros. The churros at Disneyland are way better than the churros at Disney World. It seems like the last time I was at Disney World, I don't know what they're doing. They're pre-cooking them and leaving them out for a really long time. You can't get a nice, crisp, warm, fresh out of the oven churro. They're also smaller at Disney World from what I noticed. So the churros are better at Disneyland.
Yeah, I would actually go so far as to say that pretty much all of the snack carts / grab and go are better at Disneyland than Disney World. Some of that is the incredible fresh fruit from the nearby fields, the variety. I mean, we joke about the pickle pin. My son and I have run to get the pickle pin. First person to buy a pickle in the park in the morning gets a special pin. But I mean, you can just pick up a half of a pineapple that's already peeled
Yeah.
and cut up, mango, things like that. I think part of the scale of Disney World makes it such that they do produce things in mass quantity to be able to satisfy that demand. And that's just a little different at Disneyland. And I think a lot of those things that you can experience, I think, put it this way, I wouldn't think about doing a multiple day Disney World trip without having a meal inside of a restaurant. But I think with Disneyland, there are a lot more reasonable grab and go options that are actually good snacks and good food than at Disney World.
Yeah, quick service options. One exception to that, I agree with you, except that they have the roasted nuts in Disney World and they do not have those in Disneyland. But yeah, I agree with you on everything else.
All right. Well,
that's
next
actually
up,
on my list is the quick service at Disneyland is better than at Disney World. Yeah, lots of better quick service options at Disneyland.
The quick service at Disney World is geared for moving people quickly. Like that's really what it's there for. So any meal that they come up with, it's how can we make lots of them quickly and what holds the best. And sadly, that's a healthy dose of chicken tenders and very dry hamburgers.
Yes.
So that's a good segue to the next thing on my list, which is the history of Disneyland. And you alluded to this when you talked about the place where Walt walked. But I think they've done a really good job preserving the history of Disneyland. And maybe I'm a little bit bitter because they closed down Tom Sawyer's Island at Disney World. And it was just such an iconic place for our kids to go. But I feel like Disneyland has managed the struggle between the old and the new in a way that a much bigger Disney World has struggled to do at times, quite frankly. You've got the Matterhorn really not all that far away from Batu. And definitely the theming stays consistent. But I think they've done a really good job preserving the history and some of the things that I think are really important, like the shooting gallery, looking at you, Disney World. These things just still exist at Disneyland in a way that gives you nostalgia when you walk around the parks.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good point. There's a lot of history there at Disneyland for sure. I love that you pointed out too that the juxtaposition of the Matterhorn and then the new too. That's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job with the transitions, and to some degree, I think even at Disney World with the scale that they have and the amount of land that they have, there are still times where just little things. So, for example, in Batu in Disney World, if you're on Millennium Falcon and you weave your way through the final part of the pre-show before you get to Hondo's pre-show, you can see Slinky Dog popping up over the top of the trees. And it's, it's not horrible. It's not, oh my gosh, it's not, one of those things, but it's fixable. Like there was a way to deal with it. And I just, I think that Disneyland put a lot more thought into how to do that than maybe in some places in Disney World.
Even though they're so small and don't have nearly as much room.
Right.
To work with. Yeah. All right. Next on my list is have two more for Disneyland. Web Slingers.
Love Web Slingers. Great ride.
Well, we won't have any of those types of rides. None of the Marvel stuff at Disney World because of the Universal Disney World agreement. And so Web Slingers, I love that ride. It's a great ride. It's a game type ride and you play as a team with your car and it's really, really fun. So Web Slingers at Disneyland is a win for me.
Yeah, I imagine at some point we'll have to dig into that agreement. But suffice to say that, and I won't remember the name of the actor who played the Black Panther, who passed away a few years ago, but the rumors were that they were planning a Black Panther attraction in Epcot over by where Ellen's Energy Adventure used to be. There's an old pavilion back there that they used to use for festival time and stuff like that. But the way the agreement works is that if there isn't a major ride at Universal, Disney World has the right to claim that character. And so there was some thought in that, well, maybe they'll make multiple Black Panther movies and they'll have that Black Panther experience. They'll start to have more of a Marvel feel at Disney World. Alas, we haven't seen a whole lot of that. As you note, the agreement limits quite a bit of it.
It does. So that is why we do have Guardians of the Galaxy on both coasts, but not Spider-Man, because there's
Yeah.
a Spider-Man ride at Universal.
Yep.
What about you? What's your next one on the list?
Next one on my list is transportation, and it's a two-part one. So first off, multiple airports to get to Disneyland. And I almost experienced this a couple weeks ago when I was going to come join the gang for a trip that I ended up having to cancel at the last minute. But I can get from Las Vegas to John Wayne Airport. I can go into LAX. I can go into Long Beach. And those airports have multiple flights a day from many of the hubs, but also a bunch of the smaller major cities on the West Coast. In Orlando, it's a heavy dose of Orlando International. There's a little bit of lift into Sanford. It's a big Spirit airport, about 45 minutes north of town. And Brightline has made it a little bit easier to fly into like the Fort Lauderdales or the Miamis of the world, but it's not a cheap train. And so transportation options to the region, I think, are a plus for Southern California. And then the obvious transportation options once you're there, which is you don't really need the transportation options. With Disney World, you're almost forced to get onto a bus or in a car or some other method of transportation to get between any 2 points, your hotel and a theme park, with very few exceptions. And at Disneyland, I mean, we talked about this in our episode where we talked about the hotels around both properties. There are dozens of hotels that are an easy walk to the parks. Easy walk. So I think Disneyland definitely wins on transportation.
Yeah. So that's kind of tied to one of mine, which is just how quick and easy it is for me personally to get to Disneyland, because I'm just a quick hour airline ride away, a few hours in a car if I need to. So yeah, for me personally, it's quick and easy to get to Disneyland. But yes, multiple airports give me lots of options for affordability too, as far as prices go. So my last one on my Disneyland list is kind of different. I noticed this as a big difference the last time I was at Disney World. There is a bigger security presence at Disneyland. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but what I will say is things are less likely to go wrong at Disneyland because there are eyes watching you all of the time. And if you're doing anything that seems like it might be unacceptable, security is there, and they have a lot of undercover security. When I was at Disney World, I saw a lot of shady stuff going on and there was no security anywhere. So I don't know if there's just if they have less cameras and things like that, maybe less undercover. I don't know, but it just seemed like the security presence at Disneyland is a lot heavier.
Yeah, and I've never really taken notice of the difference between the two. It's an interesting observation on your part. I find a number of cases where the Disney World security is, lackluster is probably the word. So, they force you to go through security in the parking lot at Disney Springs, but in Disney World, but there's not a lot of purpose behind it. Sometimes I get in with a battery in my pocket, sometimes I don't, that sort of stuff. And the folks that are performing the checks don't feel like they're vigilant about protecting safety, to put it that way.
Yeah.
All right, well, last on my list for Disneyland is sort of going back to a constant theme here, and it's the theming of the parks. I think we talked a little bit about it in terms of how they mesh things together, all that stuff, but I think there are all these little elements at Disneyland that tie things together and make each little separate area special. And it's not that they don't do that in Disney World, but I think that at Disney World, it's Magic Kingdom is very much themed, and there's a concerted effort to keep the theming separate for different areas. Batu, the Star Wars area, also very heavily themed. But where areas like Hollywood Studios used to have little tiny shops and place you could sit and have a drink, and the fountain outside of the Muppets Theater and things like that, where Miss Piggy was in the center of the fountain. Some of that continues to fade away in other areas of the park at Disney World, where I think at Disneyland, a great example, like the black and white movies that are shown on Main Street, the Penny Arcade, I think they do a better job making those things authentic, even though they're leaning into ways to monetize the parks in some cases, where I feel like at Disney World, again, the store is built to move lots of people through it because of the volume. And so it just maybe it could be themed, but in order to encourage people to be able to buy things, it is not as heavily ornate and themed as its counterparts.
Yeah, I agree. I would have to say, and a good example of that is, to me, Toontown at Disneyland, the way that they've redone it and they keep it up and keep redoing it and retheming it with the new fountain and all of those fun things that are in there, but also the difference between Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Disneyland versus Disney World. I know that it's supposed to be a different queue experience, and
Yeah.
it definitely is a different queue experience between the two. You're supposed to be in a theater, I guess, in Disney World going to see this movie. Disneyland is just, you're immersed in the cartoon from the minute you walk in. And I love that about that ride, and I wish they would bring some of that to Disney World.
Yeah. No, I definitely can't disagree with that for sure. All right, you want to dig into Disney World now and what we think is better at Disney World?
Yeah. So my first one on Disney World is the wait time for parades and fireworks. There's a huge difference between how much time you need to wait at Disney World versus Disneyland. Disney World, even with the new parade, the Starlight Parade that has been launched, you don't have to wait very long compared to Disneyland, where you have to wait 2.5, 3 hours for the parades and the fireworks, especially if you want to be up front and center by the castle for the fireworks and you want a prime viewing spot. People camp out longer. So that's, for me, the fact that I can just walk up and have a castle view of the fireworks at Disney World 15 minutes before the show is amazing.
Yeah, and I think they've done a good job of including that in the reservation system, if you will, the ability to book those new areas. I think when they redesigned the center of Disney World, creating a couple of areas where they could create some green space and people could sit and wait for the parades and the fireworks was a plus. So if that's something that's high on your list, it can be done with a lot more comfort than before they did the renovations, and they still managed to free up some space to allow you to get back and forth across the center of the park. So definitely think there was a big win there. I think they nailed that construction project. First on my list is the same thing that I started my Disneyland with, on the opposite end of the spectrum, where Disneyland can be great because it's smaller. Disney World can be great because of how big it is. And you've got, 4 massive parks, and you've got Disney Springs, and you've got miniature golf courses, and you've got 2 water parks, and there's just so much to do before you even get off the grounds. And I think the number of parks, the number of attractions just lends itself to being able to have a much more full trip. And so from a scale standpoint, it's really hard to do everything at Disney World.
Yeah, I agree. This is similar to one that's on mine as well, is that everything is so big, so open. There's a lot of room for people to move. And every time I walk into the Magic Kingdom, my breath is taken away. It's like, yeah, I guess. And it's just so grand. Like, that's all I can say, is it's so grand because everything is so much bigger than at Disneyland. All of the buildings, every Main Street, the train station, everything is bigger and more grand at Disney World than at Disneyland.
Yeah. Yep. No, I would agree. I would definitely agree. Next on my list is probably pretty similar to your churro one, even though it's not a food item. It's just one of those things that maybe most people wouldn't put on a list, but are special to us. And I will just say, because I'm a super nerd for it, it's Figment. And for those that don't know, favorite rides episode, Figment was on my list. But the thing I love about Figment is almost the same as why I love Disneyland. And maybe I'll be challenged about this at some point, but because of the size of Disney World, they can afford to have rides that have some historical significance that don't have the, cachet of Ratatouille or Guardians of the Galaxy. And Figment, the, little purple dragon that he is over in the corner, that maybe isn't super popular, but talks about the last 30 years of history since Epcot opened. The fact that there's still a place for Figment in Epcot is special for me.
Yeah, I agree with that one for sure. I didn't even know who Figment was for a really long time. And I think I told you before that I just rode Figment all the way through for the first time this past January because every time I got on it, it would break
Yeah,
and we would be
yeah.
evacuated. So that was really fun to be able to do that for the first time. I rode it again in May. I love that ride. It's great. And there's usually a wait when I go. So I don't think we're at risk of that one being pulled out because people ride it. So that's really, really good. Yeah, I agree with that one. Figment is amazing. My next one, we're ready for mine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My next one on the list is, which one should we go with? Might be surprising as well, since, anyway, security screenings at Disney World are much easier because you can just walk through. And if you do it right, you pull your phone out, you pull your battery out. Usually you don't get stopped. And it's really nice not to have people going through my bags and emptying every single thing, every bag within the bag out. I don't miss that when I'm at Disney World.
I can understand that for sure. And yes, the walking through, now that we don't have kids in strollers, I can walk through more often than not, as long as I hold my battery out. So yeah, that is definitely a plus. And I also think they've been smart, again, as they've renovated, pushing the security screening out past the transportation in
Yeah.
between Magic Kingdom and Epcot, so you can go back and forth between those two massive parks without having to re-clear security, since that is a pretty popular change for folks. So I definitely think there are some pluses there. And actually, there was a time, I wish they would bring this back, but there was a time where they had a park hopper option that bypassed security as well, where this was during COVID, where you would sort of exit stage right into a bus that would take you to a separate park, a park hopper. I forget what they called it, but I referred to it as like Park Hopper Express. And you could bypass security and pop into your next park via bus without a whole lot of hassle. And that was a nice plus. So
Yeah, I remember that too. We did that. I think it was 2017 or 2018 at Disney World. I loved it. It was great because
yeah.
you could, just like you said, just bypass that security. It saved a lot of time if you were going to park hop.
Yeah, yeah, and I would have paid a lot more for it to keep it around for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
All
What's
right.
your item on the list?
Next on my list are festivals, and I think, the festivals at Disneyland are great, but boy, do they clog up traffic. And Disney World, thankfully, with the space that they have, can accommodate tons and tons of people for festivals and still allow you to get from point A to point B fairly easily. And because there's so many booths during the Food and Wine Festival and so many separate areas, you can generally find something that doesn't have a long line to grab a treat. And, the most popular ones are going to have a long line, but there's usually at least half a dozen that are great food options that are easy walk-ups to grab a snack. They're authentic. They get, really good food choices from various countries. And, it creates a different way to do the parks. So it's not about rides if you're just there for a day to do, food and wine.
I totally agree with you on that. Disneyland has not mastered the festivals at all. They have them,
Yeah.
but the food, where you say the food in Disney World is kind of the mass produced, that's what the food at the food was in Disneyland in California Adventure is for the festivals. It's not good. It's just not good. So, but the food at the festivals in Disney World is amazing. And I love hitting during festival time because it's just really, really good food. And there's so many options. So I totally agree with you on that one.
All
Disneyland
right.
has a lot of room to improve on their festivals.
So what else is on your list?
So I have a couple more. Staying in the bubble more affordably. We've talked about this before, being able to just stay right there, use the transportation system, and be in the magic the whole time and completely immersed in it, where it's a little bit more difficult to do that at Disneyland affordably.
Yeah, I would agree. My next one on my list really jibes with this one, and I have written down, no parks encircled, and it's so, you can be in the bubble and still do a whole bunch of things that don't involve being in a park that are fun to do, Disney themed, meet a bunch of different budgets, whether you want to spend a gobsmacking amount of money to play golf at Golden Oaks, or you want to spend, $12 or $15, I forget how much it is now, to play miniature golf at Fantasia. So I think that they do a good job scaling those options. I think not enough people take advantage of, water park added on to a ticket for a period of time and not doing parks on a certain day and just going to water parks. But I think the overall size and scale allows you to not go to the parks for a day. And it really does create a relaxing environment for a trip to have that sort of like change of pace day. And that's before we even talk about all the other things you can do in Orlando, where, once you get outside of the parks in Anaheim, I mean, you're talking about a pretty significant commitment from a, traffic standpoint to get to a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you want to go to Universal in Anaheim, it's not easy to do.
No.
So yeah, that's true for sure. Yeah, I was going to say something else about that. Oh, there are a lot of things that you could do totally for free too.
Yeah.
If you wanted to just ride the Skyliner, ride the monorail, and then do lunch or dinner or whatever in the different resorts, totally for free.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I got one more on my list, but do you have any more on your list?
They got two.
Okay. All right. So why don't you do your next one? I'll do mine, and then you can finish up.
Okay. They're short and easy. My next one is the customized popcorn treat that you can get in the Magic Kingdom. I wish more than anything they would bring that to Disneyland. I love it so much. You can go in and choose which kind of popcorn you want. You can do regular buttered popcorn, kettle corn, caramel corn, and then they have chocolate, white chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate that they'll drizzle on top, and then all the different kind of candies. I usually get marshmallows and pretzels, and I like the sweet and the salty, and some chocolate peanut butter M&Ms. That's my go-to with
nice
white chocolate and milk chocolate drizzles. They need to bring it to Disneyland.
Well, and I would just say for when we do our Tokyo episode, talk about popcorn game at Tokyo Disney, not just flavors, but the popcorn mall that exists in one of the parks. So definitely we'll spend a lot of time talking about popcorn over there. And I owe you some popcorn tongs. They're sitting in a bag at my door.
Oh, I totally forgot about those. Yes, you do.
I need to send you those before I leave town again. All right, last on my list, and then we'll get to your last one. And it some of these might seem juxtaposed because we got through saying how the grab and go and the quick serve game at Disney World is weak sauce, and it is, but the gourmet dining isn't. And so I would just say, Topolino, which is a restaurant on top of Riviera Resort, is phenomenal. They do an gnocchi dish a couple times a year. In the fall, it's a gnocchi with lamb and root vegetables and this wonderful sauce, and it's unbelievable. Mediterranean sea bass, the pasta dishes, the steaks. I mean, just incredibly imaginative plates. Takumite, which is a hidden sushi restaurant in the Japan section of Epcot, where the omakase will take you 2 or 3 hours, and most people are like, well, my kids are never gonna sit through that. When we did Takumite with our kids, they didn't want to leave because the waiters, the staff, spent time teaching them origami. So they had a table covered with origami creations that they did over the course of a couple hours. So there are a handful of really, really good restaurants at Disney World that you just don't expect. Space 220, like all these different things that are just, they would be legit restaurants outside of a theme park, but for being inside a theme park, they're incredible. And I think, that part of Disney World is something that, again, for longer trips or for balancing a multi-generational trip or parents and children, a day of eating snacks on the run and leftover chicken tenders can transition to a gnocchi with a lamb ragu for dinner.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the two best things I've ever had have been at Disney World. So I lived in the Pacific Northwest for 13 years. I know salmon. Lived in the Seattle area. I'm really picky about salmon. So I don't usually get salmon at restaurants outside of the Seattle area. But at Space 220, the waitress was talking about how good it was. So I thought, I'll try it. And it was hands down the best salmon I've ever had. Yeah. And then the steak and eggs at Topolino's was probably one of the best steaks that I've ever had too.
Nice.
So good. Yeah.
All right. Close us out.
One of the things that I love about Disney World is that there are no protesters.
I did not see that coming.
I haven't talked to you about this. I complain about it all the time at Disneyland.
Oh, that's
There's
so
protesters at Disneyland. And which is fine. Yes, we need to have those rights. I just don't love people that are out there telling me I'm going to hell for going to Disneyland. Like, that doesn't make me feel good. So
Man.
I don't miss that at all when I'm at Disney World, because it just doesn't happen. So that's my last thing on my list.
Oh, what a place to land it. We're gonna land it on telling people you're going to hell for going to Disneyland. Brought to you by Catch Us at the Castle.
Yes.
Oh,
Exactly.
I love it.
Have you seen the protesters ever, Ed? Have you run into them when you've been at Disneyland?
Not hardcore. So I've seen some protesters, but definitely not to the level that you're talking about.
With their they get big speakers and yeah.
I definitely haven't seen big speakers. Yeah, out on the street outside the main security entrance, I'm assuming.
Yeah, on Harbor, just right
Yeah.
outside of the main entrance there on Harbor. It's a really interesting experience.
Well, I mean, especially because you're there to go to a theme park. It's something you're not expecting. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So
Yeah.
that's it for me.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all good ones. I had fun doing that, and we didn't put a whole lot of planning ahead into that one. We just sort of made our lists and see if we surprised each other. I would say protesters definitely surprised me, and churros took me by surprise too. I did not expect to have a passionate plea for better churros in Central Florida.
At Disney World, you haven't noticed a difference there?
I'll be
You eat
honest,
churros though.
I don't mind churros, but I don't seek them out. I like, generally speaking, for me, those sorts of snack stands, especially at Disney World, are really, I will stop at one if there isn't a line, and so most of the time I just keep going because I'm like, I'm not going to wait in line for whatever that is. The only thing that I will wait in line for, and only because they got rid of mobile ordering, is a pineapple Dole Whip at Aloha Isle at Disney World. Other than that, I'm probably not standing in line for treats.
Yeah, I will. I'm all about the food. That's perfectly great. But yeah, I would love to hear from our listeners though, and our viewers, what they think about. If you've been to both parks, tell me what you think about the churros, because I want to know if it's just me or if other people have noticed that the churros at Disneyland are fresher and better.
Tell us what you disagree with. We want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for now, until we record again, I am Ed Pizza.
I'm Steph Sweets. Catch us at the castle.
I love a castle so much that we put it in the name of our podcast.
We love castles.
You love castles. We love castles.